Ladies and gentlemen. Is that good? Ah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unite Training Day 2014. There'd usually be some music at this point, but we didn't actually plan it, so there's not. My name is Will. Alongside me is Mike and James. We will be presenting the day for you. And we'd also like to introduce our little army of helpers over here who are here to help at any moment. So right now there's a few of you who are still getting set up, but we will be getting started right now. We have the introduction for the day, so whilst those remaining of you are getting sorted, we'll just introduce you to the day. Just to introduce you to ourselves, my name is Will Goldstone. I am the content manager for the online content team based out of the UK. And Mike?
My mic's now on. Okay, I was talking a second ago, and I was like, no mic. I'm Mike Geig. I am an international man of mystery, and I also do training. James.
My name's James Bouckley. I'm a developer for the content team, and I made the project that we're going to teach today.
Cool. So over on the side here, we have an army of people who are here to help you. They are a mixture of staff people. So staff people, raise your hands and wave, say hi. You are. You're on our team. Do you remember? And then we have a number of people from the community who are community leaders, user group leaders, and other awesome people, and they can wave their hands right now. So just big round of applause for them for helping you out. Thank you, guys.
What do you mean? You work for Unity. Raise your hand.
So what is Training Day? What will we be doing today? So the Training Day, as you can see from the screens, will be split up into 10 phases. We have a provisional lunch at around 1 o'clock. We'll try and stick to that as best we can. And you'll notice that the Training Day is split up into 10. We're stopping at phase 4 for lunch. The phases are different lengths, so it's not really a hard and fast setup. We're going to be making a game. So here's what you need to know. We're going to be making an isometric shooter game called Nightmares. Hopefully by now you've all got that project open and ready to go. We have 2 machines on stage, so we're going to be showing you slides and the Unity editor at different times. Most of the time we'll be showing you the editor on both screens, but what I'd like you to do is to watch us carry out a step, and then we'll reiterate the step with slides with a number of bullet points, and that's your turn to go and do it. So don't try and rush and follow exactly what we're doing as we do it, because you might miss or not be able to take in what we're telling you. So the catch-up files are also in the USB folder that we gave you. So if you really fall behind at any point, because the day is split up into 10 phases, what you can do is to jump into that other project. So each phase catch-up file is a different project folder. So if you lose track or fall behind, raise your hand, someone will come and see you. If you've fallen too far behind, we'll ask you to jump into the next phase and carry on from there. As we said, we've got dedicated helpers, and we'll be taking Q&A at the end of the day. If there's anything that's going horribly wrong you think might benefit someone else, raise your hand and ask the helper to reiterate that to us, and we'll announce it. But here's what we're going to make. So this is a top-down kind of isometric style shooter game. You are a boy who is having a dream that all of his toys have come to life. You run around, you shoot these kind of zombie teddies and other things, and score points and eventually meet your demise. So that's what we're going to make. We're going to be learning all kinds of various different things in the editor, from putting together a scene, implementing animated characters, AI, bit of the new UI, and all kinds of different stuff.
It's a very uplifting game. You can't win. You can only eventually lose.
Yeah.
So that's the way we prefer to make them. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so the very first thing you'll notice is that on my screen I have the project open. We don't want you to have the project open at all. What we want you to do is to make your own new scene, and we're going to put this project together. So if anyone has got the scene open, we don't want you to do that. We want you to make a brand new scene. So first of all, we're going to go to File, New Scene.
Can I just reiterate or say here real quick, you do want to be in the Nightmares project. You're just going to create a new scene within that project. Yeah.
Yeah. So then what we want you guys to do, to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, we're going to ask you to set up the editor in the same style that we have. If you're comfortable with Unity, you've used Unity before, and you prefer to work in your layout of the editor, that's totally cool. You can keep that. But if you're new to Unity, what we'd like you to do is to choose the layout menu in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. So layout, drop down in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. That will get you a style that looks something like this. Then what we'd like you to do is to drag the project panel and drop it below the hierarchy. You'll note when you drag the title tabs of the panels around, they will dock into different spaces. Drop that below the hierarchy, and then you can just drag up the division between those two. Maybe drag this over a little, and then you should be all set. So hopefully everyone's got a view like that. Then what I usually like to do is with the project panel, because we don't really need to use the thumbnails particularly, there's a slider at the bottom which will change to list view when dragged all the way over to the left. So if we drag it over to the left, you're going to see exactly the same as what I have on my screen here. So we are working with Unity 4.6 beta. So because it's a beta, they are potentially prone to crashes. It's very dangerous. So what we'd like you guys to do is to save your scene right now, and also to keep saving throughout the day. So Command S on Mac, Control S on PC, obviously. But right now, what we'd like you to do is to go to File, Save Scene As, and we will ask you to put this into the Scenes folder. So we don't want you to use the completed assets version of anything. Just use the Scenes folder that's in the root of the project. And we're going to call this Level 01. So save it as Level 01 in the Scenes folder. When you've done that successfully, you should see the name of your scene up at the top of the interface. Cool. So just to reiterate, we are setting up our editor layout, dragging the project tab below the hierarchy. We've slid the project panel over, so we're looking at a list view, and we've saved our scene as Level 1 in the Scenes folder. Cool. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is to set up the environment. So I'm just going to show you that first. So what we've got in our prefabs folder. So a prefab, just to reiterate how this stuff works, a prefab is our way of providing or saving a game object into the project. You can do that for a number of different reasons, and we'll be saving prefabs in order to spawn them into the game later with the enemies. But for the purpose of the environment, we prepared the model and a number of colliders and other elements. So if you look in the prefabs folder, you'll find a prefab called environment. Prefab's represented by this blue cube icon. All you need to do is to drag and drop that up into the hierarchy. So just to remind you, the hierarchy and the scene are intrinsically linked. Anything that's in the scene and is therefore in the hierarchy and vice versa. So next thing I'm going to do is just to spin that around. So just make sure you've got a decent view of this level. You can use the hand tool, of course, up in the upper left, and use Control to zoom in and out, and Alt to rotate around. We don't need to worry too much about the view that you're looking at in the scene view, because we're going to set up the camera to look at a particular part of that later. So what we're just going to check is that we've positioned the environment at the origin. So with the environment selected, in the transform component, you should see the position is at 0, 0, 0. If it's not, just fill that in, 0, 0, 0, or go to the cog icon in the upper right and choose Reset Position. Then once we've done that, we're also going to drag in the lights prefab. Lights is in the prefabs folder. You simply need to drag that into the scene, and it should light your scene. With the lights, we don't need to worry about the positioning particularly, because it's directional lights. With directional lights, you only need to worry about the rotation. So if I just show you those briefly, you can see that these directional lights are pointing in certain rotations, and they're going to affect anything in the scene. You don't need to worry about where they're positioned. Okay, so we're going to save our scene at this point, and just to reiterate, here's what we've just seen. So we've added in the environment prefab, dragged into the scene or hierarchy, positioned it at the origin, so just to keep things consistent, and then we've done the same for the lights. make sure you save your scene at this stage. Cool. So the way this game is going to work is that we're going to have a camera that's looking down on the scene. And what we need to do in order to track the player around and also to be able to shoot is to use something called a raycast, which is going to create an invisible line from the camera to the floor. But we've got a very inconsistent floor. We've got a number of different environment objects, such as these stool, the Lego bricks, the broken train, and all these different things. So we don't want to worry about raycasting onto those at different heights. So to make things a lot simpler, what we're doing is we're going to add in a plane quad. So what I'd like you guys to do is to go to Game Object, 3D Object, and Quad. What you'll notice is this creates a very small 1x1 quad right in the center of your game. We're going to reset that to 0, 0, 0 in the transform component. So make sure the position of your quad is at 0. And we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees in the x-axis. Finally, we want this to cover the entire game level. So we're going to scale this by 100 in x and 100 in y. So just to reiterate those steps, we are creating a quad. We're going to rename this, which I've forgotten to tell you to do because I'm that good. And we're going to position it at 0, rotate it by 90 in the x-axis, and we're going to scale it 100, 100 in x and y.
Will, how do we rename game objects?
How do we rename? Good question, Mike. We rename on a PC by pressing F2 with the object selected, or on a Mac by pressing return. We're going to name this floor. So rename from quad to floor.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome, Mike. Anytime. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to make this invisible. Obviously, you'll notice that it looks pretty horrendous right now.
It is nightmares.
It is a nightmare. We don't want to actually see this. What we want to do is use the collider, so the outline of this shape. We don't want to use this kind of gray for any reason whatsoever. So a quad is made visible by this mesh renderer component. And because we don't want that, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. So with the floor selected, click the cog to the right of the mesh renderer and choose Remove Component. So with your floor selected, go to the cog icon in the upper right, choose Remove Component, and you should see that you can then only see the collider outline.
Make sure you remove the mesh renderer, not the mesh filter or the mesh collider.
Yeah. Remember, you've got undo if anything goes horrendously wrong, but you should then see that you just have the collider around the outline of the level, something like that. Okay. Then, because we don't want our raycast to check for anything but this quad, we're going to use layers. So a layer is a way of isolating things like raycasting or lighting, for example, to a particular group. So with the floor selected, if you click the layer drop down, you should see that we have a floor layer ready for you. So choose from the layer drop down at the top of the inspector, floor. And then save your scene. So we remove the mesh renderer so that it's no longer visible. We set the floor game object to use the floor layer, and you'll see in the scripting later on why that's important. And we've saved our scene. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is to finish up our environment by adding some background music. So with sound sources in Unity, we can attach them to any object. It's a component that you use to apply a clip to or use scripting to assign clips to. We're going to have a separate game object just to keep things separate and just to keep them nicely organized. So I'd like you to go to Game Object, Create Empty, and then rename this Background Music. So again, return on the Mac or F2 on the PC, just like your operating system, and rename this Background Music.
Show them the menu, too, zoomed in.
Sorry?
The game object menu.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're creating an empty, and we're creating this and renaming it Background Music. Then we can add components to our game objects to make them do different things. So we have a component menu up at the top with a bunch of different categories of things that you can do to your game object to give it different behavior or different functionality. What we're going to add is an audio source. So we can use this component menu, or we can use the add component menu over on the right in the inspector. So because the inspector will show you properties of the game object currently selected, we can go into here and we want to add an audio source. So we're going to add component one more time, audio source. So we don't really want to hear the music for this game playing every time you press play in your game, but just to make sure that everyone's works, we are going to do it once, just to see how absolutely horrendous that turns out to be. So to assign an audio clip, wait for it, an audio clip to the audio source, we can use the circle select. We're going to refer to circle select a lot throughout the day. It's the small nipple-like icon to the right. You got that 10 quid? No? Okay.
We keep it highbrow.
To the right of the audio clip. And what that will do is pop up a context window which is going to allow you to find the file you need. The file you need is background music, surprisingly enough, and simply closing that window will assign it to that. So we're now going to save our scene and everyone's going to press play
You need to
now.
loop. Needs to loop.
There it is.
Just wait till we
Wonderful.
add bullets.
That's at least working for a lot of people, which is good. So if anyone doesn't have music blaring at them or can't tell if it's from the person next to them, raise your hand, we'll come and help. But for now, we're just going to reiterate what we've just done.
Oh, hey. Oh, you got it.
It's all good. Okay, so we've created a game object. It's just empty. We've renamed it background music, assigned an audio source component to give it that functionality, and we've added the background music clip to allow it to play it back. Now what I want you guys to do is to uncheck play on awake. That's very important for everyone's sanity. Uncheck play on awake. We also want the music to loop when we are finished with the day, with the game. We do want it to loop. So uncheck play on awake and check loop. Then you can save your scene, and we are ready to move on to phase 2.
But before we do move on,
But before we do that, James has something to say, so I'm going to let him say that.
it's going to be too loud and overwhelm all the other sounds we have in the game if we leave it at one volume. So one volume is 100%. So we're going to turn it down to 0.1.
Good point. So, in the volume, on the component, there is a slider, and we can just drag that down to about 0.1. So that's just to balance it with the other sound effects that we have in the game. Good catch, James. Well remembered. Cool. And then you can go ahead and save your scene once more. That's the end of phase 1, setting up the environment. The next thing we're going to do is look at our player character.